Would you risk everything you love to stand by your principles? Barron Trump just did, and the results were unforgettable. It was a crisp Saturday morning in Arlington, Texas. The local soccer field was buzzing with energy as players warmed up, parents chatted on the sidelines, and coaches barked out instructions. Among them was Barron Trump, towering over most of his teammates at 6'7", despite being only 17 years old. Quiet and reserved by nature, Barron preferred to let his performance on the field do the talking. Today, though, his presence drew attention for a different reason. A bright red MAGA hat perched on his head as he jogged onto the field. Barron didn't think much of it. To him, the hat was just another way of expressing his views, something he thought little of in the privacy of his home. But the moment he stepped onto that field, the atmosphere shifted. Teammates exchanged glances, parents in the bleachers whispered, and Coach Dan Callahan, known for his fiery temper and staunch belief in keeping politics out of sports, immediately zeroed in on the hat. Coach Callahan strode onto the field with purpose, his voice cutting through the hum of chatter. "Barron!" he called out, waving him over. The rest of the team paused, sensing tension. Barron jogged up to the coach, who folded his arms, his face a mix of frustration and disbelief. "What's with the hat?" Callahan asked bluntly, his tone sharp. Barron shrugged. "It's just a hat, Coach." Callahan's eyes narrowed. "This field isn't the place for political statements. You know the rules. No politics, no exceptions. But I'm not trying to make a statement," Barron replied, his voice calm but firm. "It's just who I am." The coach's patience wore thin. "Take it off or you're off the team," he barked. A hush fell over the field. Barron glanced around, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on him. He hesitated, his fingers brushing the brim of the cap. Then, to everyone's surprise, he straightened up and said, "If that's how it is, Coach, I'll leave." Without another word, Barron turned and walked toward the parking lot, leaving his stunned teammates and the rest of the field behind. The whispers from the sidelines grew louder, and the coach, momentarily caught off guard, muttered something under his breath before calling the practice back to order. But the story didn't end there. Barron wasn't the kind to back down so easily. As Barron walked off the field, his heart pounded. He wasn't sure if it was from anger, humiliation, or the mix of emotions swirling in his chest. He got into his car, gripping the steering wheel tightly, replaying the coach's words over and over. The parking lot was eerily silent compared to the noisy field behind him, where life seemed to move on without him. At home, the conversation didn't take long to surface. Melania, ever protective, was concerned. "What happened out there?" she asked gently, noticing Barron's unusually quiet demeanor as he stepped through the door. Barron hesitated, then explained everything: how Coach Callahan had confronted him, the ultimatum he was given, and his decision to walk away. Melania frowned deeply, while Donald listened intently, his expression hardening with every word. "That's unacceptable," Donald said firmly. "No one gets to silence you like that." Barron raised a hand to stop him. "I don't want to make this a circus," he said quietly. "I just wanted to play soccer." Still, word spread quickly. Within hours, parents on the team were gossiping in group chats, and the local high school community buzzed with divided opinions. Some thought Barron was being stubborn. Others admired his principles. On social media, it wasn't long before a photo of him walking away from the field, with the hat still firmly on his head, went viral. The backlash was swift. Coach Callahan was praised by some for enforcing the no politics rule, while others accused him of overstepping and making an example out of Barron. The comment section turned into a battleground. "This kid needs to learn the world isn't about him." "Good for him for standing his ground." "Freedom of speech matters." But Barron wasn't reading the comments. He was focused on one thing: figuring out what came next. Days passed, and his absence on the team was felt. Despite his quiet demeanor, Barron had been a crucial player, both for his skill and the sense of calm he brought to an otherwise high-strung group. Without him, practices felt tense. Teammates whispered about the incident, some feeling guilty for not speaking up, others worried they might be next in line for Callahan's discipline. Coach Callahan, however, was unrelenting. "Rules are rules," he told a parent who questioned him after practice one evening. "If I let one person break them, where does it stop?" But beneath the surface, Cracks were beginning to show, and Barron wasn't finished yet. The days following the incident were harder than Barron expected. Soccer wasn't just a game to him, it was his escape, a place where he could clear his mind and lose himself in the rhythm of the game. Now that outlet was gone, and he felt a strange emptiness every afternoon when practice would have been in session. At school, the atmosphere was different. Some students avoided him, unsure of where they stood on the issue. Others quietly whispered their support. A few, emboldened by anonymity, mocked him in hallways and on social media. "Crybaby Barron," one post read, paired with a poorly edited image of him wearing a MAGA hat and holding a trophy labeled "Most Political Player." Barron tried to ignore it, but it stung. He wasn't used to this kind of attention. He didn't want it. It was as if his every move was being scrutinized, and no matter what he did, someone was ready to twist it against him. One evening he sat in his room, staring at the red hat on his desk. The simple piece of fabric seemed to have taken on a life of its own, carrying a weight he hadn't anticipated. He thought about what his dad had said, that no one had the right to silence him. But he also thought about the coach's rules and whether he'd been wrong to wear it in the first place. Melania knocked softly on his door. "Barron," she said, her voice gentle, "you don't have to carry this alone. People will always have opinions, but you need to decide what's right for you." Her words hung in the air long after she left the room. Barron thought about everything: his teammates, the sport he loved, and the message he wanted to send. Slowly, an idea began to form, one that grew clearer with each passing day. But standing up for what he believed in would take more than just an idea. It would take action. Barron's resolve solidified during a restless night when he couldn't shake the feeling that walking away wasn't enough. The next morning he took out a notebook and started jotting down his thoughts, ideas about what the coach's rule meant, what soccer meant to him, and how he could respond without creating more division. He spent hours researching online, diving into stories of other athletes who had faced backlash for expressing themselves. He read about Jackie Robinson, Colin Kaepernick, and even high school players who stood up against injustice in their communities. Their courage inspired him, but Barron wanted to do something different, something that wouldn't just make headlines but also foster understanding and unity. One day after school, Barron approached his old friend Taylor, a teammate who had always been supportive. "I need your help," Barron said, showing him the notebook filled with sketches and ideas. "I'm going to organize a charity game." Taylor's eyebrows shot up. "A charity game? Against who?" "Anyone who'll play," Barron replied with a grin. "The point isn't who wins. It's about showing that sports can bring people together, not tear them apart." Taylor nodded slowly. "And you think the coach will go for it?" "I'm not asking him," Barron said firmly. "This isn't about him. It's bigger than that." The next week was a whirlwind. Barron and Taylor reached out to local businesses for sponsorships, designed flyers, and posted announcements on social media. The idea caught on quickly. Teammates who had stayed silent during the incident began to step forward, offering their support. Even some parents who had initially sided with the coach came around when they saw Barron's determination. The event gained momentum, with local news outlets picking up the story. "Teen kicked-off soccer team organizes unity game," one headline read. Barron felt a mix of pride and anxiety as the date approached. What if no one showed up? What if it failed? But the momentum was unstoppable now, and the day of the game would be a turning point no one could have predicted. The day of the charity game arrived with a nervous energy hanging in the air. The field, once the center of the confrontation, was now buzzing with excitement. A small crowd gathered early, including students, parents, and even some unfamiliar faces from the community. Local businesses had donated snacks and drinks, and a banner stretched across the bleachers that read, "Unity Through Sports." Barron arrived an hour early, carrying boxes of jerseys he had borrowed from a local league. He had barely stepped out of the car when he saw Taylor running toward him. "You're not going to believe this," Taylor said, out of breath. "The coach is here." Barron froze. Sure enough, there was Coach Callahan, standing at the edge of the field, arms crossed, watching the preparations. For a moment, Barron felt his resolve waver. Was this going to be another confrontation? He took a deep breath and decided to focus on what mattered, making the game a success. As the players warmed up, Barron couldn't help but notice how diverse the group was. Teammates who had stayed silent during the incident were now laughing and joking with players from other schools and even local pickup leagues. A group of younger kids kicked a ball around on the sidelines, their parents watching with smiles. When the game began, it was electric. The players gave it their all, but the atmosphere was lighthearted. Every goal was met with cheers from the crowd, and even small mistakes were met with laughter. Barron played like he had something to prove. Not to the coach, not to the crowd, but to himself. For the first time in weeks, he felt the joy of soccer again. At halftime, Barron addressed the crowd. Standing in the middle of the field with a microphone in hand, he spoke from the heart. Sports should bring people together, not tear them apart. We all have different beliefs, different backgrounds, but out here, we're just players. That's what matters. The applause was deafening. Even Coach Callahan, who had been watching silently, gave a small nod of approval. But the real surprise came after the game. As the crowd began to disperse, Coach Callahan approached Barron. "I've been coaching for 20 years, he began, his voice gruff but not unkind. "I've seen a lot of players come and go. But what you did today, that's something I haven't seen before." Barron didn't know how to respond. He simply nodded, his earlier anger toward the coach melting into something closer to understanding. "You've got guts, kid," Callahan added. "Keep that up." And for the first time, it felt like a bridge had been built instead of burned. But the true impact of Barron's actions was just beginning to ripple through the community. In the weeks following the charity game, the ripple effect of Barron's actions became undeniable. Local news outlets featured the event as a symbol of unity in a time of division. The headline, "Teen Athlete Sparks Community Movement Through Soccer," graced the front page of the Arlington Gazette. People who hadn't even attended the game began sharing photos and videos online, spreading Barron's message far beyond his hometown. The school community, once divided over the incident, began to come together. Students who had mocked Barron in the hallways approached him to apologize, some even admitting they admired his courage. Teachers brought up the charity game during class discussions, using it as an example of leadership and the power of standing up for one's beliefs. But the most surprising change came from Coach Callahan himself. One afternoon, as Barron was leaving school, the coach caught up with him. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," Callahan said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "I thought I was protecting the team by enforcing that rule, but maybe I lost sight of what's really important." Barron didn't know what to say at first. "It wasn't easy for me either," he finally replied. "I just wanted to show that we can have different beliefs and still respect each other." The coach nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I want to make it right. If you're willing, I'd like to have you back on the team." Barron hesitated, not because he didn't want to return, but because he had changed in ways he hadn't expected. Soccer still mattered to him, but now he saw it as a platform for something bigger. "I'll think about it, Coach," he said with a small smile. "But either way, I appreciate it." The community didn't forget the lesson Barron had taught them. Inspired by the success of the charity game, the school organized similar events, each one bringing people closer together. Barron found himself becoming a reluctant leader, not just on the field, but off it, as someone others looked to for guidance and inspiration. And in the end, that's what Barron valued most. Not the headlines, not the applause, but the knowledge that he had made a difference. He had turned a moment of conflict into a movement for understanding, proving that even when the odds seem stacked against you, standing up for what you believe in can inspire change. And that's the message we can all take away. Never underestimate the power of your voice, no matter how small it may seem. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe and join us for more powerful narratives like this one.